Hello everyone, and welcome back to what I believe is probably the worst modern F1 game. Yes, we're back today here on F122. For those of you that have been around the channel, you'll remember this game. I went full time when this game released. It might have been a mistake, but here we are, back once again. And today we're just going to kind of take a look at kind of what went wrong, why this game was such a failure, and why it's kind of steered the F1 games almost in the wrong direction over the last few years. Of course, if you're new, please do make sure you leave a like, get yourself subscribed to the channel as well. We're doing more of these kind of throwback videos at the moment. I want to say a massive thank you to everybody for the support on the one we did on F1 2021 a couple of weeks ago. That video's absolutely done way better than I was ever expecting as well. So I thought, yeah, we'd go from a really good game to one of the worst ones inside the franchise. Now, I'm not going to immediately say that there's a direct link between those two extra letters added to the start of the title, but of course, yeah, let's get the elephant out of the room. This was the first game the EA kind of had full kind of control over as a developer as well. So, immediately, this, F1 Life. What on earth is this about? Why is this still a thing? You know, you get all this. I don't want to go through all of this today, but you can customize a house. This isn't The Sims. This is an F1 game. We want to race F1 cars. So, yeah, if you're wondering why that's still a thing, it's been around for 3 games now, and they still haven't really learned that nobody cares about it. And let's not forget the other big one that still pains me quite deeply. Obviously, we lost classic Formula 1 cars. We did get Supercars, though, which handle absolutely horrendously. In fact, you know what? We might just take one out for a spin at some point in this video as well. There'll be timestamps linked down below to separate segments of this video. But, you know, it did add some good things as well to the franchise. For the first time ever, 2-player career mode was a thing inside F1 22. Obviously, Gary and I did one. It broke. Then we did one on F1 23, and that also broke. And now we've done one on F1 24, and that's also broke. So, yeah, co-op career mode is still lacking a bit of quality control, it would appear. But I think the thing that really did kill this game, annoyingly, for most people, was just how bad the handling model was. Now, obviously F1 2021, we mentioned in that video just how good the cars were in F1 2020 and F1 2021. They nailed the feel of the cars. They nailed how you would kind of expect to drive a Formula 1 car on those games. Obviously, for 2022, this was the first era of the ground effect regs, and obviously F1 had kind of talked of a big, conversation about how the cars were going to be 5-6 seconds a lap slower. That, as we now know, didn't quite end up being the case, but clearly EA and Codemasters never got the memo, because these things on this game handle like nothing I've ever driven before. They are so unpredictable. They are so weird to drive. So what we're going to do, I think, is we're going to go out in Sebastian Vettel's final F1 car there, the Aston Martin Aramco Cognizant Formula 1 team, AMR, whatever it was called. We did Jeddah in the last video. I don't think we want to go to Jeddah today. This game, I don't think, even added any, obviously, apart from Miami, which is a new track for 2022. I don't believe we got any new circuits. We did still keep France, as well as, I believe, a couple of other ones, didn't we? As you can see, obviously, yeah, we've got, like, no Las Vegas or anything like that. But, yeah, we did still keep Portugal and Shanghai as well. So I guess we've got that one extra circuit over what we had in 2021. Of course, Russia was very much immediately scrapped out of the game as well. But yeah, we still did have La Castellet. Controversial opinion, but I do actually quite like that circuit inside the F1 game. You know what, we'll go back to Jeddah again, like we did in that F1 2021 video, and maybe we'll just see if these cars are as bad to drive as I remember. Right, well, here we go then. My first lap on F1 2022 in over a year, I would have thought. And I've got really no idea as to what to expect with this one. Immediately, seeing just how much more understeery the car was than on F1 2021. And you've just got no feel. Immediately, I'm noticing a lack of feel at that final corner. What I think the big problem was on this year's game was, unlike, obviously, F1 2021, where the cars were very, very hunkered down, F1 2022, they felt incredibly floaty. They felt all over the place. And it feels like it's probably about a foot higher than where the car was on F1 2021. And going from a game where the cars felt so connected to a game where, unless you're at really high speed, I mean, look at that! It's not even able to take the S's anywhere close to flat. I know I'm not running a setup or anything like that, but it was just such a downturn in terms of the handling model. And I think, you know, on previous games as well, we kind of seen tweaks and changes to the handling that, you know, we didn't like and things like that. You know, you can't always get the step forward in the right direction, but I think the big problem for a lot of people with F1 2022 was there was nothing really about the handling model that was better than 2021. You know, the cars were completely different. Of course, a lot of it wasn't helped by the real season. Obviously, early on in 2022, Ferrari, it looked genuinely, I thought, there you go, there's an example of how bad the traction is. Early 2022, I, as well as a lot of other people, thought Ferrari's back. They've nailed this regulation. It's going to be their year. They're actually going to do it. And of course, that didn't come to be. That has just reminded me, obviously, that Le Castellet was still on the calendar in 2022, courtesy of Charles Leclerc going for a spin and obviously basically ruining his championship hopes at that point for good. But of course, yeah, we kind of had obviously Ferrari and Leclerc nail the opening few rounds of the year, and then obviously Red Bull and especially Max Verstappen got their act together. It should have been a closer season than it was still, but of course Ferrari bottling it kind of ruined it as well. So obviously we come off 2021, or obviously the season was incredible and the game was brilliant. When I go into 2022, real life season didn't really live up to the hype. If anything, the cars ended up more spread out. And then the game was, you know, obviously the game lacked a lot, to be honest. You know, they kind of taken a couple of decent steps in the right direction. Career mode didn't really have a lot of changes to it. Obviously, we come off of breaking point in 2021. That obviously was going to then be back in F1 2023, so we got none of that in 2022. Pretty much they tried to bank on the selling features being supercars and, you know, customizing your Sims house. No one cared. And I mean, no one cared. I know the classic cars weren't ridiculously popular in the F1 games. That was ultimately why they scrapped them. I loved them personally, but a lot of people, yeah, they just weren't that popular inside the game. But they were a whole lot more popular than supercars. Let's try and just push this Aston Martin a little bit more. Of course, we've already gone for one spin so far. But of course, especially where you come off the game, where you can just put your foot down really, really easily off of every corner. And obviously, these cars as well, yes, they weren't as quick, but they weren't a million miles away. And obviously, especially through the high speed, they should have been better because of the ground effect. But it just kind of feels, yeah, that, you know, obviously it's difficult for them to really get, you know, any kind of proper data or anything like that. iRacing nailed it, though, with their Mercedes, because, of course, that's based on the 2020... Well, that is the 2022 Mercedes car. Codemasters just never really got the memo about how the cars were meant to handle, and this thing... you kind of give it credit for how well they've been able to recover it. 2023's handling model was pretty good again. 2024's feels it's a little bit too easy still, in the way that this game was a little bit too hard. And I haven't even got to the worst bit about the handling model, because Jeddah unfortunately doesn't really showcase it that well. Curbs. Curbs on this game felt completely RNG. I mean, we saw it down the end of the next straight as well, but curbs on this game were shocking. Absolutely abysmal. You had no feel over what, like I said, obviously, over what the back of the car was doing. You just could not work out kind of whether the car was going to grip up, as example there, or whether it was just going to spin on you, and they would spin in an instant as well, you know, very much unlike a car with ground effect would do. These things would just go like that, you know, almost instantaneously, and like I said, you know, they felt heavy as well. Of course, we had, there you go, there's an example, the traction. Yeah, obviously the real-life cars, no one, apart from Sauber, I think it was, could get down to the minimum weight requirement at the start of the year. So rather than kind of making the teams have to work towards that still, they just kind of upped the minimum weight. So the cars felt even heavier then, and that kind of screwed things over even more. I think before we go into a race, I'm going to test out a supercar and just remind you how bad they were. Right, well, here we are then in the AMG GTR Pro. I'd forgot as well, you have to unlock all of the supercars in this game. You don't just get them to have a drive around with, you have to unlock them as the game goes on. Now, the first problem with them, I'm going to go into cockpit cam. Obviously, F1 cars, you got like 360, 400 degrees of steering. Every single time you wanted to drive these cars, you had to change your settings inside the game. They didn't just kind of make it work, you had to change it up so they would actually respond as you would expect. And you can see immediately just how bad that is there. I'm obviously running decent steering lock in this car, and it's just not responding to the way I want it to. So trying to recalibrate that every time was a pain. They tried to force it kind of into career mode. You know, you could do like these special events like you could do with the classic cars beforehand. And they were actually quite a fun idea if they weren't so mind-numbingly repetitive and really kind of gave you no decent kind of information as well. You know, they didn't really provide you with a lot, apart from like some extra cash, which of course anyone that's played the F1 games for long enough will know. Cash very quickly becomes irrelevant. I know it's very, very odd to be saying that about a Formula 1 team. But yeah, cash very, very quickly on these games kind of loses all meaning. Now, the cars, you know, they were modelled quite well. They look fine. But it was quite clearly, you know, we got, I think it was, you know, Mercedes, I think we got a McLaren, a Ferrari, and an Aston Martin. Now, classic cars in the F1 games, I think they were around for 4 or 5 iterations. These things were binned off after 2. Nobody was using them. And, I mean, this one's not a good example of it. There you go. Some of them you could drift a little bit. Most of them just handle like a bag of spanners. They did not work on the F1 handling model. And I don't know whether the F1 2022 cars were partially compromised to make these cars work better. If they were, that was a really stupid idea by EA. But they just did... I mean, I get, obviously, they're road cars. They're going to be way slower than an F1 car. But it almost feels like they... I mean, it just feels so understeery and just completely uninspiring to drive. I mean, I'm trying to kick out the back end. Like I said, this is a Mercedes AMG. These things are meant to go sideways. And it just kind of... It weirdly doesn't want to straighten up. It just feels lazy at the end of the day. Like, I cannot stress to you enough how quickly these things flopped. And the fact we lost classic cars for this still, I think, haunts and annoys people to this day. We get classic drivers in the game. You can race with Ayrton Senna or Michael Schumacher, which feels so realistic. I often get asked why I've never featured them in any career mode. Ultimately, I just find it really, really odd. But yeah, but you don't get any of the cars they drove or anything like that anymore. Such a strange choice by EA and Co. I mean, this thing just... I mean, it's got ABS, surely, and it's still just locking up everywhere. And like I said, I'm trying to get the back end out on it, and it just will not kind of cooperate the way I want. And, let's not forget, if you're playing the F1 game quite a lot, and this isn't everyone, you're going to be doing it on a Formula-style steering wheel. Trying to race a car like this with a Formula-style steering wheel just does not work. And there you go, that's probably another good example. Jeddah, in the F1 car, we were 156,000th in the world with what wasn't an awful lap time. I mean, it was invalidated, but it wasn't a bad run. This car, invalidated, I spanned 3 times, 12,000th. That's how few people touch these cars. And it's just terrible. It's terrible. Let's go for a Grand Prix. I think we'll go back to Old Spa for that one. I don't know what car I'm going to do yet. I might go in the Ferrari. Well, again then, I don't really know how I'm meant to set up the car inside this game. But of course, yeah, here at Spa, it is very, very high speed. I'm expecting at some point in this video for us to bin it through Pouon. Because, yeah, on this game it was... As I've said, high downforce was absolutely where this game was at its worst. You just had no confidence in it. Silverstone Turn 1, I remember being another notorious one. It always just kind of felt like the downforce would just randomly switch off, which is not ideal in a Formula 1 race car. But I've gone with that for the setup. I don't know if that's any good. I don't know why the game keeps trying to force me back to cockpit. I don't mind it, but yeah, for this video, I think we'll just try and go with normal one. And... immediately, I forgot to change my steering rack back from the Supercars. So annoying. Right, attempt 2 then. Now I've managed to get all my steering set back up here in the Ardennes. Are we going to be able to put this thing anywhere near pole position? My guess is probably not, because, yeah, I struggle. I mean, immediately through turn 1. Obviously, I've said it before, F1 24's handling model is too easy. You know, there is a bit too much grip. And I think ultimately, like many people have said, F123's chef's kiss in these generation of cars. It was fantastic. It worked well, it operated nicely, it was predictable but not too easy, and ever since then, yeah, it just feels like things have taken a step in the wrong direction again. Immediately I'm forgetting just kind of how understeery this car is as we almost run it wide over the curve at the top of the hill. Can we also appreciate as well, as much as I love this old version of Spa, how much better the new one looks as well, because kind of leaving this venue now makes you realise just how dated it was inside these games. Never forget the strat there of trying to make sure that you kept two wheels over on that little strip of asphalt, I guess it was, or AstroTurf even. That was always quite funny, watching Danny Berezne absolutely cook around this venue. But yeah, all the curbs are so big. I forgot how much you can push the curbs around this venue as well. And I tell you what, I'm staggered we haven't kind of spanned more than we would on this lap. I mean, P1 even wasn't particularly pretty. But yeah, this car's obviously got very, very good top speed. Like I said, Ferrari in 2022, they did have a really competitive car about the first half of the year. Red Bull kind of leapfrogged them in the second half of the campaign. And of course, yeah, Verstappen just started obviously operating at another level as well. But through the final corner, no grip whatsoever, and we're going to lose a rear wheel right before the line.
Based in the Ardennes countryside, Spa hosted its first Grand Prix back in 1925. This historic track is loved by our drivers and fans alike. So it's a warm welcome from the Belgium Grand Prix. So here we are once again, ready to go racing through the Ardennes forest. 4.35 miles of long straights, fast corners and massive elevation changes. It makes this not only one of the most exciting circuits on the calendar, but one that makes for some consistently high quality racing as well. Simply put it, there's no place quite like it. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. World champion Max Verstappen starts from pole position. Sergio Perez lines up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Fernando Alonso, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Russell, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, and Yuki Tsunoda, Joe, Norris, Kevin Magnussen, and Mick Schumacher, Ricciardo, Albon, Lance Stroll, and Sebastian Vettel. Latifi and Charles Leclerc completes today's grid order. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
Well, of course, this was the first game that had Mark inside the F1 titles, and that might be one of the only welcome additions to F1 22. Of course, looks like based on the grid rundown, we've still got all the porcelain dolls that we had from 2021. How badly they've butchered Yuki in this game is hilarious. He looks like a 70-year-old grandpa rather than a Formula 1 driver, but we're ready then on the grid for the Belgian Grand Prix. I forgot, of course, we've still got Gotifi. That Williams livery in 2022 as well was also pretty cool. And apparently I've got a formation lap, which I don't believe this was the first game to have them, so I don't care to talk about it. Right, let's do this thing then. It's time for the Belgian Grand Prix. I'd also forgot just how bad McLaren were this year. 5 red lights. It's going to be lights out and away we try and go. Oh, man, I do not miss this. I do not miss this. Some of you might remember, I'm sure I'll get a couple of comments about it. The last ever stream I did on F1 22, I've been playing F1 23 for like a week, but I had one last Williams Road to Glory stream to do on this game. It did not go well for a Brazilian Grand Prix sprint. In fact, it went absolutely terribly, and I span out like 6 times and ended up 3 laps down. I think that probably goes to sum up just how done I was with this year's game. But we can already see quite a lot of battling going on up the hill. Sebastian Vettel there trying to make a move on Daniel Ricciardo. Saw there, obviously, the two Red Bull teammates a long time prior to this on the top of the world. But, yeah, leaving Red Bull really did never work out for either of them. Did it there as Ricciardo trying to make a move back down the inside of the Aston Martin. We're kind of going to go for a touring car move there on Sebastian Vettel as immediately, you know, these things, the dirty air was meant to be less. It feels worse than it did on F1 2021 when you're kind of stuck in traffic there. I mean, that corner, you shouldn't have to blend out that much through Blanchimont, through Pouon even, should you? It just feels so awkward. I think this was the problem with F1 22. They just didn't really quite know what to do with it. And that was a bit of a shame. It kind of just felt, yeah, a bit all over the show, a bit rusty. And again, 7th gear, flat out, nothing wrong, and immediately it just snaps. Well, someone also needs to make sure they put a spin counter in this video, because, yeah, I think we're probably going to do it a couple more times. What is that? I know, obviously, yeah, in that situation, I shouldn't go down the inside of Ricciardo. But if someone's gone down the inside of that corner, surely you give them some room. That has just reminded me just how much of a step backwards the AI took inside F1 22 as well. They just, you know, in a lot of situations, refuse to give you any room whatsoever. Like I said, you know, that one was completely on me. But usually inside this year's game, you could get to the inside of an AI car and they would just turn across you. They did not care as... See Alex Albon there battling it out with Magnussen and Mick Schumacher as we make our way down towards Rouge and Rally on once again. I don't know how important ride height's going to be, but I did try and make sure that it felt quite high, and even then, I can still feel the back of the car trying to break free. It is quite impressive, though, when you think just how much of a resurgence Aston Martin and McLaren have had over the last couple of years, because at the start of 2022, they were... you know, at the back. They were the two slowest teams on the grid after the opening few rounds of the year. It was so bad. A lot of people thought Mercedes had completely messed up their power unit because no one could believe that kind of the three worst teams were all of the Mercedes-powered ones. And even Mercedes, of course, had taken such a step backwards from the big teams as well there. But obviously, as time has gone on, we kind of learned, yeah, that wasn't quite the case. And just all of them really did struggle to kind of nail those regulations the way they should have. Can we go back around the outside of Latifi? He can make any power unit car seem like the worst one on the grid. There we go. Finding a little bit of grip that time round. But yeah, I mean, it was a weird, you know, it's kind of an odd one because we kind of just treat this era as kind of like one season really leads into the next. But it does still feel like there has been a fair amount of change in IRL Formula 1 since 2022 as well there. So, you know, obviously Sebastian Vettel no longer in the sport. Of course, 2022 was his final year. Probably, I always wonder with him. I don't think he regrets it, but I wonder if he ever thought it would have been nice to have a go in that 2023 Aston Martin. I think the harsh reality is he probably wouldn't have been able to do as much with it as Alonso did. But I'm sure Seb would have loved this game as well with how easy it is to spin based on the last few years of his Formula 1 career. But you can just see again, trying to put the power down, it's so awkward. It just kind of, you know, it feels like you're fine, you're gone. Even through like Eau Rouge and Radion again, you're just wobbling around a little bit. Now, I'd also forgot, near impossible to recharge the battery as well on this game. You had to be so careful with your management of obviously, you know, because it was, I mean, into that braking zone, I think we charged back up 3% on the pack. I know it's not particularly brilliant and the AI don't use it properly either, but F124's battery, I will say, I'm a big fan of kind of the new way it works. It's Lance Stroll. I'm going to go for a touring car style move and bump him out of the way again. I think I remembered to disable damage for this one, because I knew immediately we weren't going to have much fun. Tyre strategy as well, like every F1 game, it was a one-stop, but it was an awkward one-stop on this year's title. You basically had to manage both sets of tyres a lot, but there was kind of no real tricks or skill to it. It was more just about kind of just being a bit lucky, to be honest. Obviously, you can make a few setup tweaks and things like that, but it felt like tyre wear was very lateral for most people. We've got a few AI that are trying to go for the alternate strategy here, but ultimately, yeah, it didn't make much difference on this year's title. So trying to have a look around the outside of Albon. No, he'll give me the room. And I'll accidentally squeeze him out on the exit of the corner there. Again, I just kind of panicked at the last moment that, yeah, he was just going to turn in on me once again as we got a little bit of a battle going on for the final points paying position. But you go anywhere near a curb, and it just bites you. It just becomes unpredictable and not fun at the end of that. And I think this was the big thing. That, obviously, we spoke about it in that F1 2021 video. Obviously, F1 2020, because of COVID and everything like that, absolutely popped off. The numbers on that game were insane, and it deserved it. It was a fantastic game as well. 2021, you know, the numbers stayed pretty good, but a lot of people, you know, kind of got bored of the F1 games and things like that. 2022, because it was such a disaster at launch, and because, you know, myself and a lot of other content creators, you know, gave it a lot of stick and kind of said how much work it needed doing, so many people went away. I think it was something mad, like numbers dropped by over 40% between F1 2021 and F1 2022. And then obviously 2023, the real life season was boring as hell, so no one cared even more. So numbers again dropped another 40%. I've gone and picked up damage. This is just not going well for us, is it? This is really not my Grand Prix, and that's to be expected on this game. I mean, look at the understeer. I know I sent it in too far there, and we'll go for another spin. This is... well, this was F1 20... Thank you. Of course Latifi stacked it into the back of us. How has he managed that? And I get a penalty for it. For God's sake. I think that little moment there should go to showcase to you just how bad F1 2022 really is. And I think, to be honest, I don't even want to finish this race. This was seemingly where kind of the F1 games lost their way a little bit, if I will. A complete focus on the wrong things. And yeah, they brought it back in the right direction with 2023, and maybe so with F1 2024. But if you're planning on building an F1 game in the future, this is not the one. Let me know down in the comments below what you really thought about F1 22 as well. Why you either didn't like it or did like it, perhaps. I don't care what Vettel's doing, Mark. But yeah, this game, it left a lot to be desired. And I'm happy, really happy, that I don't have to play it anymore. In fact, I think once I finish this, I'm going to go ahead and uninstall it. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll be back very soon with more Formula 1 content.